You've got big projects to tackle, but your day gets swallowed up by repetitive tasks and constant inquiries. It's hard to make progress when you're stuck putting out fires. That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. Acting like an extra set of hands, you get your time back for the high-impact projects. Ready to reclaim your time? Visit element451.com/AI team to learn more.
Generation Z is now in the workplace. All right, say it with me. Oh, nah. I'm joking. There's no about this, especially if you ask Janet Reeves-Wilson. She sees Gen Z, as a matter of fact, as a big opportunity for a lot of folks, and she is giving Generation Z a big vote of confidence. After this interview, you're probably going to wind up asking yourself, when it comes to Gen Z, who wants to be coached, who wants to be guided, are we coaching them or are they coaching us? Three things you're going to wind up taking away from this interview. One, you're going to learn about Generation Z's workplace characteristics. Also, you're going to learn what's important to Gen Z in the workplace. And last thing, we're going to find out what considerations leaders can make to prepare for Gen Z in the workplace, especially at colleges and universities. Now about our guest. Janet Reeves-Wilson is a career and executive coach, and she's also a career counselor. She runs Divine Metamorphosis Coaching, and she is passionate about inspiring others. Can't wait for this conversation to kick off. By the way, like this episode, follow the podcast, share it with friends, and when you get an opportunity, give us some feedback. All right. Here's this episode of I Want to Work There with Janet Reeves-Wilson. Welcome to I Want to Work There, a podcast that helps colleges and universities boost their brand as employers of choice. I'm your host, Eddie Francis, brand strategy consultant for Edify Ventures. Join me every other week for discussions with some of the best minds in talent recruitment and retention, human resources, and marketing and communications inside and outside of higher education. I Want to Work There is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals just like you grow, and explore our other shows at enrollify.org, or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Thank you so much for joining me on I Want to Work There. I'm Eddie Francis. Joining me is Janet Reeves-Wilson. She is a career and executive coach. Janet, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. How are you?
Thank you, Eddie, for inviting me. I'm doing well today. Thank you.
So Janet reached out to me. She had this idea about making sure that folks are prepared to basically receive a new generation of folks in the workplace, Gen Z. And she and I, before the podcast, talked a lot about Gen Z. And in your capacity and being a coach, and especially when it comes to career counseling and that sort of thing, tell us about that background that you have and how you came to be a coach, because you kind of went an unusual route to become a coach. So how did it happen?
Okay, well, I'll start with my educational background. I have a bachelor's degree in biology. I also have a bachelor's degree in allied health, which is what I received after I finished training for histology. And that was the career that I was in for 30 years. I was histology technologist, which is a laboratory healthcare professional. I was in that field for, like I said, 30 years. The first 20 of it, I absolutely loved. I couldn't wait to go to work every day. I loved my coworkers. We worked really well together. We would go to each other's family events, and it just was a really cohesive community type feel. It had a really community type of feeling to it. And slowly, as we got more administration and more rules and regulations, it became not so great of a place for me. It didn't support me health wise, which is kind of crazy because it was a hospital, but it was a lot of stress. I became overwhelmed a lot. I became burned out. So after being there for so long, I said, let me investigate something else. So I decided to leave and I went to a conference with my husband where there was a coach, a life coach working with the business participants that came to that conference. They were entrepreneurs and business owners. And I got a chance to witness the phenomenal work that she did, not only with the business owners, but with me. There were some things, some activities that we had that I could have had a different outcome. And she kept asking questions and probing deeper and deeper that it had me say, I didn't even realize that that was something that I could have done. That was something in my blind spot. So she just kept digging deeper and deeper and deeper and asking these questions. And I came up with these answers on my own. So now that these are answers that I come up with, I can do this with myself often. If I have a problem, I can kind of coach myself through it. Like, okay, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling? What happened here? And just kind of go through that process. Another thing I wanted to say is if it wasn't for coaching, I wouldn't be on this podcast with you right now. I met, and I'm also an adjunct professor at Roosevelt University, and I met the department chair while I was still working at the hospital in the lab. The hospital I was working for wanted to start their own histology training program. So they reached out they knew I came from Roosevelt. So they reached out to Roosevelt, and the chairperson came to the lab. I met her. We had an instant rapport. And later, after I left and got trained in coaching, I reached out to her to coach the students. And she just happened to ask, hey, would you like to teach a histology course here at Roosevelt as an adjunct? I was like, okay. I still love the field. It just that working in the hospital wasn't working out for me anymore. So I decided to become an adjunct professor and start working with teaching the students histology, which is a subject that if they're headed to medical school, dental school, optometry school, a lot of the professional schools, they need to have at least working knowledge of histology. And that's how I met her. And had it not been for me coaching, I would never have reached out to her. I would never have thought about even teaching histology. I would probably have went from that hospital to another hospital and still be working in the lab. But because of this exposure to coaching, I was reaching out to different schools in order to coach their students. So just the phenomenal work that I witnessed that a life coach was doing just had me say, that's my next career. That's what I want to do is be a coach.
So one of the things that I found that was so interesting when you and I talked before the recording is how much you have come to understand Generation Z. And one of the things that I think higher ed is still struggling with is the fact that Gen Z is now in the workplace. They're no longer students. What are your impressions of Gen Z? What are the characteristics that you have seen from them as far as their expectations of what work is like or how they have responded to work?
Yeah, they are different generations and a different generation. And I like to preface this by saying that I actually enjoy working with them because I understand some of the things that they bring to the workplace and where that kind of came from. Because every generation grows up in an era of something that impacts them back in the days when it was World War One, that impacted that generation. The Vietnam War impacted my generation. COVID impacted the Generation Alpha, I think, is more, and Gen Z also. COVID impacted them as well.
Yeah, and 9/11 impacted the millennials.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So those things happening, different things during different times impact every generation. And Gen Z, they have a unique perspective, and they have the potential to be the greatest generation so far, and make really great contributions to the world.
Wow, that is one heck of an endorse. You are the first person who I've heard give that kind of vote of confidence to Gen Z.
Oh yeah, they have it in them. It's just that they need a lot of support, which is one of the things that I've noticed about that generation, is because most people, first thing they say is the entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and that's because they're impatient. They want to hurry up and be successful. And one of the things that drives a lot of their behavior is, unfortunately, social media. They see all of this stuff on social media, what this person has, what this person says, and they're really impressed and impressionable. And so they think, oh, I'm this age, I'm supposed to be a manager. So they'll come in and say, okay, I've been at this job for 3 months. I want to be a manager. Because my young clients, my Gen Z clients, are in the workplace, and they'll say, I want to get a management position. And I'll say, huh, okay, you want to work in the management? What credentials do you have? What training do you have? What is your expectation? What is your definition of being a leader and managing people? Because you're going to be doing a lot of things that you don't expect to be doing, putting out fires, managing people that don't want to work, managing your peers who are going to be maybe jealous of the position that you have. So, how are you preparing yourself to be a manager? You haven't been there really long enough to have a solid knowledge of everything that you want to bring to this job. So, how are you preparing yourself? And some of the other things that I've noticed about them, they're really anxious. Always talking about anxiety. But I think what they're doing is that's an overuse of that word, because and I've coached a lot of them around, okay, so what makes you anxious? Is because you just say that you're a little nervous, you're overwhelmed, you're unsure, you're not confident, you're don't have a high enough level of resilience, which is another key thing that I noticed that is lacking in them, is that their resilience is not there.
But Jan, but Janet, I have to ask this because as a Gen Xer, I remember the baby boomers having the same complaints about us. I mean, they said I remember baby boomers saying they called us a microwave generation. So they said, "Oh, you want everything microwave, just like your dinner. You want everything, you want it now. You're not tough enough." I remember the baby boomers saying almost the exact same things about us. So whenever I hear this, I always have to wonder: are we talking about generational shifts? Are we talking about young people being young people? Because I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, because at this point, I think the oldest Gen Zers are maybe in their mid-20s or something like that, late 20s, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah.
are they just young people being young people?
A lot of it is young people being young people. That's where they are developmentally. Because I was just thinking back when I was 20 something. I didn't have confidence, but I did have a certain level of resilience, but I didn't have all this media coming at me.
Yeah, that's
Really,
true.
we just had TV, newspaper if you decided to read it, and the radio. So if I didn't take any of those media outlets in, I wasn't bombarded just constantly with different things that's happening, not only in my neighborhood, in the city, in the state, in the United States, across the world. I wasn't getting all of that in unless I was seeking it out.
Yeah, and if we think about the effect of social media, everybody on social media is successful.
Exactly.
It's so funny. My son is 20, so he's a Gen Zer, and I had this conversation with him just yesterday about VTubers. I haven't gotten into the VTuber thing, but these are people, virtual reality YouTubers and that sort of thing. And he kept talking about this one was a millionaire, that one is a millionaire. That was and my question was, well, how do you know they're millionaires? And he just kind of said, well, that's what they say.
Said,
so, so I can see
like
how
they wouldn't lie, right?
right. I can see how Gen Z can be a bit impatient because they are on social media at least being bombarded with this belief that anybody who is an influencer is making a lot of money. And of course, as they scroll through Instagram or as they go through TikTok or whoever, everybody's an influencer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah. That's like my son today. He often finds things. He's a millennial, and he'll find things on social media and we'll look at and laugh about. There were some young ladies, I guess they're influencers, and one of them took her younger brother with them on a trip. And so he took pictures with each of the girls, and it made it seem like they all took their boyfriend with them. So this one guy is taking pictures with 5 girls, each of them, to make it seem like they each had their boyfriend with them. And I'm like, oh my God, okay.
Hey there, it's Mallory, Chief Strategist of Enrollify. Higher ed is facing a leadership crisis. The demands on today's college and university leaders are skyrocketing, and talent is leaving the industry at an unprecedented rate. New leaders like you are emerging, but no one is getting the proper training to be successful. Well, Enrollify is here to change that. Our new course, Lessons in Leadership, taught by Dr. Carrie Phillips, will prepare you to be a confident, empathetic, and effective leader. From systems thinking to adaptive leadership, building culture to handling difficult decisions, this comprehensive online course is perfect for new and aspiring leaders. Don't wait. The course starts September 9th, and for a lucky group of 26 students, we have the option to add interactive sessions with Dr. Phillips for personalized guidance. Visit Enrollify.org to learn more.
You're listening to I Want to Work There. I'm Eddie Francis, and we're talking to Janet Reeves-Wilson. She is a career and executive coach, and we're talking about this new generation coming into the workplace, and not so new anymore, Gen Z. They are now our coworkers. And so I wanted to get this idea of how colleges and universities as workplaces can really understand Gen Z, coach Gen Z, and really start working with them. And so when you look at their workplace behavior, how do you see their workplace behavior differing from other generations?
Well, their workplace behavior goes along with like some of their, I guess, characteristics that they bring along with them. They need some help with their soft skills. Sometimes
Interesting.
they don't speak professionally to people. Some of them are outspoken, and they'll just blurt out, whatever's on their mind without considering, okay, I could have said that a better way.
So, yeah, and I wanted to ask you about the definition of professionally. So when you say professionally, they're not necessarily thoughtful. They're not necessarily monitoring their language or aware of language a lot of times, or aware of tone and that sort of thing.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So, and that could be helped either with some coaching or with mentoring, or just reminding them, okay, I have a certain way I want to be spoken to, which I have to remind my students. I have a certain way I want to be spoken to. I have a certain way I want to be addressed. I'm in the classroom. I'm Professor Wilson. Some of your professors may want to be called by their first name. I do not, because I like to keep a certain level of decorum. So just in reminding them, okay, you said that this way. I'd like to invite you to think about saying this in another way and tell them the reason behind that. They always want to know, why should I do this? What makes that a good idea?
They are a very curious bunch. They want to know the reasons for a lot of things. I actually know someone who he's a baby boomer. He runs a business, a small business, and he got interns and they're Gen Z, and he was giving them the rundown about what to do if something went a certain way, if this happens, if that happens. And he goes, okay, if this happens, then make sure you come to me. And one of them asked them, he told me one of them asked them, well, who's your boss? And he said, well, that's not how this works. And I laughed at him and I said, well, to them, that is the way it works, because to them, you have to answer to somebody. And so he said, but I run the place. And I said, yeah, I know, I get it. But what they want to know is, if they can't trust you, who can they trust? And he just had the hardest time with that. It was really a very difficult. It was a very difficult thing for him to navigate in that moment. And we I said, don't worry, you'll get there. But I'm telling you right now, they are not going to back down.
Right. And to just continue to explain those things to them, because they need a lot of praise. They need reassuring.
Mm-hmm.
They do lack those soft skills. So mentoring them and letting them know the languaging.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to give them a definition of something so that everybody's on the same page as far as what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's define what professionalism is.
Yeah.
Asking them, okay, what does professionalism mean to you? When
Right.
you hear that word, what comes to mind for you?
Mm-hmm.
Which is something I do and I know to do because I'm coaching. I'm a coach, and my job is to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious. I want to know who they are as people.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe for your friend, getting to know that person and asking them, about their level of trust. What has them trust somebody? What do people need to do in order to gain their trust? Telling them that, hey, I worked for someone and I rather work for myself. That's something that you can aspire to. Then you don't have to answer to anybody.
Yeah, because I mean the baby boomer Gen X way of doing it, especially something like an internship, is you come in, put your head down, and just go to work. Don't ask any questions.
Right.
Just
you
come
do what
in.
I say do.
Yeah,
right?
Your boss says do this, go ahead and do it. Just put your head down and go do it, and run towards the wall. So I can see where that is a really big gap in understanding the situation between a baby boomer who owns the business and a Gen Xer who's an intern, thinking to themselves, well, you may own the business, it doesn't mean I can trust you. And by the way, I could probably run this business myself. I'm 24. I've learned a lot of things.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes to get that a different perspective, it wouldn't hurt to ask them, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing this way. What are your thoughts on how we could do this?
So we have this HR data, and the data tell us that while pay is definitely important to folks of any generation, doesn't matter which generation it is. I mean, right now there are lots of calls for salary transparency in job ads and job descriptions. But the data also tell us that people appreciate being appreciated.
Right.
That is a very big thing, again, across generations. People just want to thank you, if nothing else, for a job well done, or for at least putting the effort forth.
Right.
What about Gen Z? What's important to them? What have you heard that's important to them? You brought up mentoring a few times, so it sounds like guidance is something that's important to them. Am I correct?
Right. Exactly. They need a lot of guidance. Some of the things that are important to them is, did this job fulfill my sense of purpose?
Yeah.
What is my development? How are you going to help develop me personally and professionally? They want coaching. Mentors help people with their specific profession. But a coach is someone that can help you with your professional development and your personal development.
Mm-hmm.
I have clients, especially the Gen Z, time management is a big thing for them. They really struggle with their time management. And so I work with them on their time management. Their mentor may not necessarily be able to work with them on time management because they might be struggling with time management.
Yeah.
So they can tell them certain things, but if I'm struggling with something and I don't know how to kind of get my issues out of the way so that I can help you, then that's going to stand in the way of me helping you with that particular thing.
Yeah.
Gen Z likes ongoing conversations. They don't want to just be talked to at the time of their annual review. They want constant conversation with their employer, their boss, manager. They want to be in constant conversation with them. They want to talk about their strengths. We already know what their weaknesses are. They don't want to focus on a weakness. They want to know what their strengths are. They want to know what they're bringing to the job. What is it? Why did you hire me? What did you see in me? Which kind of helps to build their confidence.
Mm-hmm.
They're not very confident, which, like we talked about at 20 something, and really, how confident are you?
Mm-hmm.
But, someone that will constantly tell them that, okay, you did this in a good way, knowing how to give the feedback as well. Some people like to be praised out loud in front of people. Some people don't like that. So asking, how do you want me to acknowledge what you do, acknowledge you for a good job done? How do you want me to do that? If we're at a meeting, a departmental meeting, and I can say, John did an awesome job at this. Or if you would be too embarrassed by that, I can just send you an email saying you did an awesome job on that project.
I would completely screw that up. I would screw that up so bad because I'm the one who loves to praise people in front of everybody because I want everybody to know who did a great job and I want that person to feel appreciated. I mean,
Right.
like I can be pretty empathetic as far as leadership is concerned. So I would feel so horrible if somebody said, okay, you didn't have to do all of that. And I'm going, what? Are you crazy? No, you're the best.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I get that because I like that too. It's like, yes, keep it coming, keep it coming, keep it coming.
Exactly.
But some people, they're horrified by that.
That is so funny. What about, you know what? There's something that I have been hearing more and more and more about, and that is authentic leadership. I mean, I've got to think that Gen X is going to look at someone in a leadership position and say, listen, if you say that you're this kind of person in front of me, you've got to be that kind of person behind closed doors too. And I've got to think also that they have a lot of appreciation for leaders who show vulnerability and that sort of thing. Would I be correct in that, or would I be on target?
Yeah. And generally, when you describe yourself to someone, you're describing your ideal self.
Yeah. Okay.
And Gen Z will just have to be a little more tolerant of when there is a mismatch, in what the person is saying and what they actually do.
Yeah. Interesting.
And that's just human nature. That's
It is, but it does. It's interesting because it does two things. I think for instance, so let's say the president of the university, which I've got to say that university president's jobs are only going to get, I think, a little bit more challenging in terms of people management going forward, because now it sounds to me like a university president is going to have to figure out how to constantly talk to a workforce full of millennials and Gen Zers, and that president is a Gen Xer. I mean, they're going to have to really, really figure out how to communicate with these folks and how to do it in a way that's going to humanize them. But at the same time, they're going to have to really teach, it seems, a lot of Gen Zers and maybe even millennials. Hey, listen, this is what it means to show somebody grace. Okay.
Right, right, right.
It's okay. It's okay to be human and to screw up, and it's okay to make a mistake. And it's okay for me to misspeak as a leader. I'm going to show you grace, and this is how I'm going to show you grace. This is how I would like for you to show me grace. So it seems like there are going to be a lot of things that presidents, and now we're starting to see a lot of millennial presidents. So it seems that there are going to be a lot of things that these tail end baby boomer presidents, the Gen X presidents, and these front end millennial presidents are going to have to really learn about communicating with Gen Zers.
And communication, effective communication is so key. And let me tell you this little thing about communication. 70 to 90% of it is non-verbal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So another thing that I do is I'm a behavioral strategist, and I give people behavioral assessments. And a lot of what we say is unspoken, is not said. Just like, okay, my behavior now, I do a lot of talking with my hands. That's kind of indicative of my behavioral style, because I talk with my hands, which helps, get my brain going, I guess. And like I was telling you about some people that don't like to be praised out, in front of people, that person has a different type of behavioral style.
Yeah.
So being able to just notice people, how they act. Are they quiet? Are they extroverted? Do they like facts and figures? Are they the person that is the kind of go between different coworkers and colleagues? Are they the person that likes to keep the peace? Are they the person that likes to make all the decisions and kind of take over the meeting? Is it a person that likes to organize all of the potlucks and get-togethers and things like that? Knowing people's behavior is really important as well. So, and if you don't take any type of behavioral assessment, just notice who does a lot of talking when you're in any kind of meeting, or who's just listening, who generally likes to say, okay, 40% of this population likes this. Who's that person that's the fact and figure? Who's that person that if you did have a study or something, that's the person that you go to, because they're going to make sure that job is done and done right. It may take them a little while to do it, and you maybe need to check in with them if you have a deadline, but they're going to make sure all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed.
Yeah. So I wanted to get an idea. I always ask my guests about the way forward for colleges and universities to make sure that they are positioned as great places to work. And I think for this conversation for Gen Z, we really want to say that we want to figure out how to retain these folks once they get onto a campus and they take on their new role in whichever area they're going to be taking on their new role, on the academic side of the house, the business operations side of the house. I want to focus on one level of leaders, because these leaders, the middle management folks, they have so many touch points with people in any organization, but on a college campus. I mean, you're talking about department chairs, directors who have touch points with the people above them, the deans and the other administrators. And then, of course, they have the touch points with the folks who are going to be reporting to them. The same with directors on the business operations side. So what are some considerations that folks in those spaces need to make sure that they make so that they can figure out how to retain Gen Z? And of course, we know it's probably going to be pretty hard to keep a Gen Z for about 20 years.
Oh, yeah. They don't go anywhere. Millennials don't go anywhere to stay for 20 years.
Exactly.
And certainly Gen Z, no. If you can keep them for 3, you're doing really good.
Like one of my uncles says, the grass don't grow under their feet.
No, it does not.
So if they really wanted to make a run at retaining them as long as they can, and I don't think it's impossible to keep somebody long-term that way these days, but if they wanted to make a good run at retention, then what are some of the things that you believe they need in order to retain the Gen Z worker?
Well, maybe just in general, like, what kind of position are they hiring them for?
Mhm.
And, what kind of benefits are they going to get with that? Insurances, choice and flexibility is really important to them.
Yeah.
Will they be teaching virtually? Will it be synchronous or asynchronous? Like, virtually, like in front of the camera, or the students do all of their work on the computer and they just check in with them every so often? Will they be required to be in person, or will they have the option of being hybrid? Sometimes they go on campus, sometimes they stay, they can teach virtually. The demographics of the faculty. I mean, are the demographics the same for the faculty as it is for the students?
So representation is a big deal.
Representation is
Wow.
huge. And these are some other elements that they look for: a sense of belonging, being accepted, valued, and included in a group or community. Does your college make sure that all its new hired faculty go through some sort of orientation? Do they
And
feel?
you know what's crazy about that, Janet, is that may sound so. From those of us, I went from the private sector into higher education, and for those of us who go from the private sector, that's kind of a duh thing. But people have no idea how many colleges and universities do not do orientation.
Right, they do
You
not.
get thrown in the deep end and you got to swim.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And for them, that orientation and feeling a community will give them a sense of security, which is another thing that's really important to them, especially in an educational setting. Another thing that they like is recognition. Like you were saying, being recognized. Thank you. You did a great job. Having your efforts and contributions acknowledged and valued. Feeling like your unique skills and perspectives are appreciated. Is there a sense of connection? Establishing meaningful relationships, not only with the students that they serve, but in their department and the college or university overall. Being able to express their thoughts and feelings, because we know this generation really likes to say what's on their mind.
Yeah.
And can they do that? Does it feel like a safe space for them to do that?
I was going to say psychological safety has got to be big. Yeah.
Yes, without there being any consequences or retribution. Being actively involved in groups and activities on the college campus. Their mental and emotional well-being. Mental well-being is extremely important to them, as we've seen with like Simone Biles and oh gosh, I forget Osaka's first name, but
Naomi.
yeah, Naomi Osaka. They were feeling like, okay, I am not here mentally. They're at these big competitions and decided, you know what? My mental health is more important than this event. I'm out. So they took off until they felt like, okay, I can be fully focused on this. But their mental health is extremely important to them. Is that college or university willing to let them have like a mental health day and take care of themselves so that they can be there for their students?
And the thing that strikes me about Gen Z is that, just as they are vocal about, about who they are and expressing themselves, they're also seem pretty vocal about what it is they need and what they want and what they expect. That's going to be different for a lot of folks.
That's going to be very different
for a lot of folks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Janet Reeves-Wilson, she is a career and executive coach. Janet, this was really, really cool. A lot of great information. And hopefully there's some administrators who feel at least a tiny bit more mentally prepared for the new workforce right now. If anyone wanted to find out more about you, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, my email address is janet@dm56coaching.com, or they can visit my website, which is dmcoaching56.com.
Great. All of that information is in the show notes. Janet, once again, thank you so much for joining me on I Want to Work There.
Thank you so much for the invitation and for the opportunity to spread the word that Gen Z is not as is it has, like I said, has the potential to be one of the greatest generations so far.
I Want to Work There is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Mallory Wilsey, Seth Odell, Dave Kibbles, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.